Oh, so I forgot to do. You're live.
Okay, you're live.
Okay, this is live. I'm told I'm alive. This is good to know. All right, so I'm Jeff Pulver. Thank you for tuning in to the Creator Economy. Today is September 21st, and we have a wonderful show planned. If you're watching this show live on any platform other than Zoom, in other words, if you are watching this not from inside of Zoom, if you want to get a ticket, you can go to pulver.com and tune in and join us. The Creator Economy was started, the show was started back in May after I became a creator on Rally, and I started to explore the dynamics of what it is to be a creator today. And there's certainly a lot of buzz, certainly lots of interest in the topic. If you Google the term creator economy, each week on Google literally goes up geometrically at this point. The subject of today's show is a continuation of something which I started a few weeks ago, which was NFTs. It started because I actually published my first NFTs ever, first on Rally, and then I've been exploring other platforms to look at it, and I've gotten lots of ideas and creative uses for what NFTs are. And based on the feedback I've received from people who join the show in the audience, people seem to be really interested in where NFTs are going, how people are using them, what it is to be a creator. So the format for the show, if you're not familiar with it, we'll have two guests today, actually three, but we'll have two guests. They'll be in two different moments in time, and we'll have some questions with each other, conversation, and then we'll follow by a group conversation. So if you have questions that are piling up, feel free to put them into the chat. I'd like to acknowledge my sister Lauren for helping to produce the show, together with Harry, who's slightly invisible today, though his hand is there, and they will be handling the question. So at this point, I'd like to bring forward a friend of mine live from London, who is the, well, she's an NFT rebel for sure, but also a creator and certainly someone who has a lot on her mind all the time. Annie, how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me over, Jeff. It's a nice catch up to have together.
It's nice to see you. Well, yeah, it's nice to catch up. And how did you actually fall into minting NFTs? It's just like I know you're doing many other things in crypto and in the creative space, and I'm like, how did you get involved? What's your origin story?
So the origin story starts way back, probably around three years ago or so, because back then I already worked in the blockchain, and I had a podcast which was called Crypto Talks, where I spoke to different blockchain projects. And 3 years ago, I spoke to a project which was called Publica, and it's still around. And it was a blockchain platform for writers who were going to mint their novels or any books on the blockchain and then sell it through a token. That was the token, utility token of their platform. So back then, we didn't use the name NFTs. I didn't even realize that I was actually minting an NFT. I thought I was publishing a book on a blockchain. So that was kind of, how it all started. I played a little bit with CryptoKitties back then because it was like a huge thing and everyone did that. But again, we didn't really go too deep into what it actually represents, what are NFTs, and apart from being just a game, right? And later on, years after that, I continued working in the blockchain space. About a few months ago, I was looking for something more creative because I was in the DeFi niche, which is pretty kind of, financial, not very creative, not very inspiring. I didn't want to leave blockchain, but I wanted something more creative within the blockchain to move into. And NFTs were, the first and probably the only thing that came to my mind. So I started researching a little bit. I started getting involved with the Twitter spaces, talking to different NFT artists and creators, and they inspired me sort of, to actually become one of them. So that's what I did.
So you are a creator yourself, and what NFTs have you minted?
So I wasn't planning to become like a crypto artist or to mint NFTs, because when I was coming to the space, I was seeing myself more like, an observer, or, I niched down my podcast from crypto into NFTs. So I was seeing myself as someone who would observe the space, write about it, talk about it, get guests over and discuss it. But because I was so inspired by all these, amazing crypto artists around me, that after a huge break of 20 years, I actually sat down and wrote a poem. So, I wrote a poem which was inspired by the community.
So the first poem ever in 20 years? Really?
Yeah, the first one in 20 years. Yeah, I was writing, but longer form stories and, novels, but not poems. But I initially started from poems many years ago. So the poem was inspired by the community and it was dedicated to the community and it was about it, right? So, so it kind of felt like wrong not to mint it in some NFT format and dedicate it to them. So then the whole story started by getting these challenges because you're a word person, you're not a visual person, you're not doing 3D animations, you kind of what to do actually. So I went like very, very basic. I used Canva, I used the animations of the Canva, and I represented all these amazing artists by showcasing their Twitter handles. So they are kind of part of the visual of the NFT. And then I recorded my voice narrating the poem. And that's when I realized that I needed a collaboration because, music rights and all that stuff. So I went to the community. I got many people interested. I got one musician who wrote a very short piece on piano and recorded it over my voice. And we minted that piece, and that piece actually had the first bid in half an hour, and then there was a bid war, and eventually, we made, I think it was sold at 0.42 ETH, and everyone was happy at the end.
Wow.
And the second piece that I had, it actually got sold. It was on auction, and it got sold 2 minutes before I got live here at the moment.
Wow.
So that one was different. It was again based on a poem, but that poem was written like 25 years ago when I was 18. And when I was looking at my old poems and I saw this one, there was a visual 3D artist that I really liked her style. She's from London as well. And she has this very specific style. She's making 3D art and she's making female characters very detailed, like, starting from skin, like it's very, very real. So when, and the poem was pretty kind of, rebel, very bold, very kind of, within her style. I immediately imagined her pieces because her pieces have a little bit of Pussy Riot kind of flavor type of thing in it.
Right.
So I sent the poem to her. I was like, if you like it, maybe we can do something about it. And she created like a whole mini video 3D animation, and she used music and she used my voice narrating the whole thing, and it became like a mini movie, which we released a couple of days ago, and it just got sold. So it kind of happened accidentally, but I like the journey.
How much did you share? How much you sold it, the second NFT for?
This one was at 0.3.
Still, that's nice. It's, I mean, for taking what you're creative and selling it, it's nice, and that will have a life of its own and a journey of its own too. Wow. So
yeah, definitely. No, we're very humbled, to be fair, because I think what was very important for me, I'm so bad at self-promotion, and I really hate shilling, and I really hate going out there.
You're really good at promoting other people. You're really good at promoting things that you're passionate about. I know that.
Yeah, but not myself and my art and my stuff. So I was very happy that I didn't really have to promote it, because by the time that we started minting our own stuff, we already had community and we already had people who kind of, who knew us. So all we had to do was just say that it's there, which kind of took off so much burden out of my shoulders, because if I had to promote it, probably I wouldn't.
Well, that's amazing, and congratulations. And I guess we can expect in the future for you to mint some more original poetry and mixed media art.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how how to find some solutions for probably having a serialized digital storytelling sequence probably, or something along those lines, to have a serialized, NFTs, and each one of them would probably tell a story, finish with a hook, go to the next one. But I haven't figured that out yet. So I'm just thinking that at the moment, the way I see this, it's probably collaboration and co-creation is where we're going, because multi-format is what feels to fit really well this kind of, this space.
I've been working out an idea to help solve the problem, the fact that your NFT is only viewable on the platform that you sold it to. Maybe it could be transferred to a wallet to another NFT platform, but there's not much. Once you create the NFT, it's very difficult for other people to see it. And one of the challenges I've had as a NFT author myself is the frustration people get. They may like my photography, they like looking up into the stars, but there's no implicit right to download my photography or to do anything with it other than look at it on the platform.
So there are several projects that are trying to solve this problem and are already live. There is a thing called Showtime, and there are a few other virtual gallery type of things, which basically what they do is they link to your MetaMask wallet. They kind of, read and see all these digital assets, and then they place it on a website or, in a virtual gallery where people can go to the website and just walk through it and see those pieces on
I was looking at using Wi-Fi frames.
Yeah, Wi-Fi frames too. I think, if I'm not mistaken, but I may, just mistake the brand name, but Samsung TVs have a special series of a model where it looks like a real frame for paintings.
Right.
And when you don't use it, it shows your NFT, digital art. And when you switch it on, it works as a TV. But the frame is done in such a way that it looks like a real painting on the wall.
Well, that's nice. Well, it's good to know that it's good to know that there are solutions in place, but there are also lots of different standards associated with the publishing of NFTs. Some that are popular, some that are in development, and being able to have ubiquity and have ubiquity across platforms is something which we may or may not experience just because of the protocol challenges. But certainly if your NFTs are on MetaMask and you're and you're storing them from a platform that supports MetaMask, certainly you could use that as a viewing mechanism. But to find inter-industry support from other platforms such as Rally, which is a completely private sidechain, is difficult and challenging. So for my own art, I was originally thinking of selling numbered and signed photographs to the original holder of my art. Whether or not you do a resale, you sell them or include my photographs, that'd be up to the person selling, but at least it'd be a physical give. And so having not solved that problem, I was looking at other ways to just make things more ubiquitous while protecting the copyright and protecting the underlying intellectual property, just to make it less frustrating. Because unfortunately, the word NFT has gotten trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars of media attention. We call that earned media, right?
Yeah.
There's no one person that owns NFT as a name. Well, there are people who have the domains, but there's much more awareness of the term without an understanding of what the term is. As much as I remember being interviewed by Forbes back in 2018 when I proclaimed that blockchain and Bitcoin were the two most overhyped, misunderstood terms in human history, because back then it was just ridiculous in terms of where it was at. But I did end the story by saying there was a $4 quadrillion opportunity ahead. 4 quadrillion is a big number, lots of digits, lots of zeros to it. And I think NFT, while may not represent as big of total market as where the blockchain space goes in totality, it's a lot of missed opportunities when consumers in all over the world, I promise you, know the letters NFT, but don't know what it means. And
Even creators don't really. I mean, if you speak to creators, not all of them actually understand the full depth of it and what it actually means, apart from, because for many crypto artists, NFT and crypto art are the same thing, and there's nothing beyond that for NFTs, right? So even within the creators, there is a misunderstanding there sometimes.
well, I think in our case, we're only limited by imagination, by how we see things and how others see things, and how we then reappropriate it. So, like in my business at Jeff Pulver Entertainment, we started using NFTs. I guess the first use of it was actually for me just to share my art, and then we migrated to using it as a platform to sell tickets to conferences. Then we started using it as a way to sell subscriptions to our shows. And we have other things that are underway. And I, of course, also used it as a way to work with some of the artists from Jeff's place to take their music, just a sample of their music with their permission, mixing it with my photographs to create music NFTs, and to really help support the up and coming artist community. And there aren't necessarily no rules about it, as long as we don't break the law. We preserve copyright and we preserve intellectual property. So I think but in the next, I'm sure it already has happened. I'm just not aware of it, but I'm sure major brands are thinking about NFTs. And if they can, consumerize how NFTs could be used in their business, big scale, big businesses, I think that will happen next. And so it's just that knowledge transfer and knowledge building. It's like when we are teaching, we're not selling. And so there's a large gap, not of the term, but just what does it mean? And as a consumer, how do I use it? And how do I then benefit from that? And so, but I think that as those gaps are filled in, every major brand from across, if you will, all the holders, all the stakeholders from television, from movies, from music, anywhere in the mass media world, they will figure out, particularly if you remember like the fast food restaurants that have all these collectibles and stuff, or the games they play at McDonald's. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Pepsi or somebody starts minting NFTs because they become a collectible. And gas stations 30, 40 years ago used to give away glasses. If you take gasoline, petrol from my station, you get a commemorative glass. I can imagine you'll be getting NFTs or some type of collectibles there. Baseball cards, which I used to collect as a kid. I still have my collection I found recently. They all could be, that's like some of the original comic books and baseball cards to me are some of my original NFTs, but we didn't call it that then, but it's just, and frankly, those are just examples, but to take a new term to apply to something old is one thing, but to take a new term and apply it to stuff in the future is something else. And I think that as we start to create new things, looking forward in the future, I believe that in the unbounded future where we go, the ability for creators to be compensated through smart contracts, which means that every time something is sold, there's a royalty. That opens up the opportunity for artists who are living to really benefit from it, and then their future heirs to also benefit from it. So that if Van Gogh or take an artist to any artist you like, if their heirs could actually benefit from the resale every time there's a major auction, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah. But right now, the money goes to the collectors, right? The actual original artists or their foundations are never taken care of. So I think
absolutely, yeah. It can also become a stream of passive income. It's just
there. So thank you for joining the show. I'm gonna jump to our other guests, and you'll come back.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. And if you have any questions for Annie, please put them in the chat. The questions are being curated. I'd like to bring forward David and Jason, please. Good afternoon. Hi, David. If you just unmute yourself. Hi, Jason. So these are two friends. I found out they know each other for at least 10 years. They went to film school, and they're now disrupting the movie industry. David, could you share what your project is all about?
Well, sure. Yeah. So Jason and I focus on stories about people in the center of science and technology. We do feature documentaries released for theatrical viewing, but of course with COVID happening, there's not a lot of movie theaters right now. showing films. So we just finished our most recent film, and actually Jason's the best person to pitch what the Stewart Brand film is. Can you kind of give us the pitch on the Stewart Brand story?
Sure. So it's a film about a technologist who's actually a fan of the blockchain, no surprise, but Stewart Brand is a counterculture legend who started out with the Merry Pranksters back in the 1960s and then had a hand in founding the modern environmental movement with a picture of the first ever published picture of the whole Earth. And so David and I track him over 3 years as he goes about his modern day mission of trying to bring back extinct species. So he's once an environmentalist, always an environmentalist. And so our film kind of, takes issue with what he's trying to do, which is to bring back extinct species, and is sort of marries his two passions of the environment along with technology. And I guess spoiler alert, they don't bring back the woolly mammoth in the course of our movie, but it's sort of a rollicking adventure into technologies of the past and where things are going as a futurist. And so we finished the movie 2020, and COVID shut us down. We tried to re-release it in 2021. And by then, there was this really a ton of interest in NFTs, which we were curious about previously, I guess the previous year. And we figured, hey, maybe we could be the first to bring a film to market through NFTs.
And so he's the one who did the whole Earth catalog. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so what happened with your idea of the NFTs? So you went from using, I guess, so you used the NFTs as a funding source, or what was the idea? You were going to use the NFTs to, I understand that you're going to use the NFTs as a gating factor, that if I own the NFT to the film, I get to watch it on demand wherever I may be. But I guess you were also using the proceeds from the NFT sales to help fund the movie. Yes.
Well, yeah, to fund the distribution of the movie.
Fund the distribution.
So instead of having, Netflix buy it and show it on Netflix.com, the concept that we had is, well, what if we opened it up to the crypto world, people who are interested in Stewart Brand and people who are interested in NFTs? We sell it to the community as a fractionalized NFT, and then use those funds to do the traditional theatrical release when the time is right, to promote it online and otherwise. So it's kind of like we're both building a community online through the blockchain and using that to help support the traditional release of the film.
And what have you learned so far from those efforts?
Well, we're so new to the NFT world. We're learning how little we know, and so we started a campaign on Mirror. Do you know the platform Mirror? I
do not, but I saw now I understand. But before I heard about what you were doing, I did not know about Mirror.
Yeah, well, we didn't either, and we just, by taking the best advice we could from folks who were out there, they recommended Mirror, which is kind of like a Kickstarter using NFTs. So it's actually really innovating, really interesting community that we're really excited about. And the idea is that you set a goal, you try to get the community to purchase a certain set of NFTs, which we created around the film and around Stewart's life, and we tried to make a certain amount of money. And we're actually in the middle of that campaign right now. We have until October 10th to make our goal. But right now we've made 50 Ethereum, which is a good amount. And
50 Ethereum, even in a crash market, that's pretty.
Even in a crash market. Well, and also the gas fees were super high, so we had a lot of trouble the whole time. But such is to be expected.
What is your goal in terms of how much Ethereum would you like to raise in total?
Well, there's different goals. So the top goal would be what we would sell, like one of our films, like our last film, Bill Nye Science Guy. When you create a film that somebody like a Netflix or an Amazon wants, usually the price is around 2 million, 3 million or above. So we said, if we can sell it to the NFT community for 900 ETH, which at the time was about $3 million, then we will just make the film free to the whole world. So the only people who own the NFT would be a part of our campaign, but it's also free for anybody to view. And so we just thought that was a really cool concept, that the film could be free to the world, but still owned by a few. And so we're still marching towards that goal. But if we don't make it, then we still will be releasing the film out through the NFT communities, and Stripe, who helped fund this, might host some of the film. We're trying to decide what to do with different goals.
Has the film been seen by the international festivals?
Yeah, so the film premiered at South by Southwest, which is a very famous and good technology and film festival. We've been in Toronto. I've been in Copenhagen, CPH Docs. It's been seen around the world at really prestigious film festivals. But what's interesting is we're having trouble finding a buyer. Like, there's not a lot of people who want to take this to the traditional marketplace because, again, nobody's going to movie theaters. So it's kind of a bummer.
And what about some of those some of the the Amazons and Netflix of the world in terms of talking to them as a distribution platform?
Yeah, we're basically on hold with them. Like, they seem to be having trouble making a decision, yes or no. So,
and have you tried Apple?
Our sales agent did try Apple. Yeah, I mean, frankly, there might be something about Stuart Brand being an old white man who's, like, maybe they just don't think it's appealing enough or something. But, we're just fascinated with the story, and it has everything to do with, both the amazing story of how the hippies had to do with computer technology back in the 60s in the Bay Area scene to today and the far future. And I think Stuart's story is just so important. We do have faith that we'll find the right buyer for it. But
just to say also too, sorry to jump in here, but it would be so cool to do the, it's not that we want to burn the old world down to make a new world, but wouldn't that be neat we'd love to follow in Annie's footsteps, who published a book on NFTs. Like, there's a whole world of possibility where people could actually circumvent, not disrupt, but go around the current infrastructure. And I just think that
going around sometimes some people might think is disruption.
That's fine.
Disintermediation is a challenging and fun thing to do.
Sure.
And it's a matter of just how you disintermediate and who's being challenged by that. But is it inevitable? Sure. I think it's all inevitable that this will be how it happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just a matter of it's education on one level, and also who are the stakeholders and who are you really disrupting? The one of the biggest challenges that as on the technology side, I was prior to getting involved in NFTs since the mid 90s. I've been very much involved in the future of voice and video on the internet. I have a lot of people know me for the work I did on the voice side, but I had an equal amount of time both in music on the net and video on the net. And I can tell you back in the 90s, we were talking about needing an act of Congress in order to redo all the restrictive content deals that cable companies have with historical content. That because I actually in 2003, I launched an alternative cable network just on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Network 2. Wow. And the only content we could show was content being created by third-party creators doing long-tail interactive TV back then, which was quite crude in terms of production quality. But we had a lot of alternative content. But wanting to take more of the older stuff from the people who owned it, we were restricted due to contracts. And because not until yesterday, and in fact even till today, a lot of content that gets sold at Cannes or some of these movie events, it's regions. So you could sell into regions of the world, but you don't have global galactic rights. And so, the cable folks have their claws in certain content. And as you know, in America and other parts of the world where you have a company that's vertically integrated that has its own TV studios, its own televisions, its own movie studios. Oh, they do their own distribution and they have cable channels and they have broadcast channels. It makes it very difficult to have an impact there. And of course, then you have the confusing part that Fox makes movies and TVs for NBC. NBC does stuff for ABC. ABC stuff for Netflix and so on. And so you have from people that are not involved in Hollywood, you have all these relationships. And so back in the 90s, we were looking at an act of Congress to free the world from all the grip that the cable companies have on content. And I think in 2021, it's the same issue in terms of freeing us from the grip that cable companies have, because they are in some ways impeding your ability to be disruptive. On the other hand, they're being protective of their future. Now, I do believe, right, if you could actually accumulate enough content and go directly from creator to viewing, you can create that alternative channels too, that you could actually be. Imagine if you find your movie turns out to be an amazing movie that everybody wants to see, and you get all the eyeballs and you get all the traffic. all of a sudden you start being disruptive to all these other folks that are playing by a different set of rules, they will attempt to go after you, even though you did nothing wrong, because you are, you're moving the needle forward faster than they're ready to see it go. But that's where I do see, if you could create collaborative efforts with other independents and create, it could be commercial, of course, but create a way where you guys can collectively disrupt cable and disrupt television as we know it, and use digital. It's the I think that's where the frontier is unbounded in a beautiful way.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And actually, that's the lesson that we took from Netflix disrupting the normal film world. Like now NFTs are coming along. I mean, do you want to resist it, or do you want to like fold in and get on board?
Well, don't forget, Netflix was what was the internet response to Blockbuster Video, right?
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. And Blockbuster Video could have like gone right ahead and did what they did, but they didn't. They stayed buried in the ground. And there's actually this quote from Stuart Brand that Jason and I absolutely love, which is, when a new technology comes over you like a steamroller, you have two choices: either be a part of the road or a part of the steamroller. Like get on board, basically. And so, Jason and I love the idea that, here comes the steamroller. That NFT has everything to do with what the future of our industry could look like. Let's get on the steamroller. And so that's why we're interested in playing with this as a way of getting our film out there. But we might even want to take it further. I mean, if it goes well, if our video gated platform is interesting and catches some attention, I mean, let's bring other independent filmmakers to it and like give them a space to own their projects. And
I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And the unboundedness is just incredible in terms of where all that can go. And I can't help but notice the Bill Nye poster behind you, David. So are you friends with Bill, or how did you actually run into him?
We weren't friends with him when we first approached him. I grew up watching him on television on my local PBS station.
Bill Nye, the science guy, yeah.
Bill Nye, the science guy, yeah, and Dallas, Texas, and Jason watched him on TV where he was from in Northern California. And so, we finished our first film in 2014. And of course, we were thinking, well, what do we do next? We want to tell another story about science and technology and communication. What do we do next? And it was weird. It just came to us. Like, we hadn't heard about Bill since we were kids. At the time, he was barely a presence on Twitter. So we weren't even sure if he was alive at that time. And so we just did some Googling, and sure enough, he was giving university talks and kind of like had this kind of roadshow of science comedy that not a lot of people knew about. So we reached out to him and said, hey, I mean, we think what you're doing is fantastic. We love what your show did for kids like us. Now we're obsessed with science, and here we are trying to tell stories about it. Let's make a film about your life. So he let us come into his life for 2 years. We followed him around the world and made what we think is a really amazing film. And you can see it now on Netflix.
That's amazing. Wow. So why, just curious, what did you learn anything specifically from Bill from being with him for 2 years?
What would you say, Jason?
I mean, certainly he basically answers any question that you have about the natural world. So like being with him was like very useful, because you could be like, you know what, like how is it that bread rises? Like, what is actually going on here? Because he makes pizza and like does all this stuff. So it was like having a very like, it kind of reminded me literally being a child and like asking your dad how something worked. But he really was able to, for me, teach me life lessons about the sort of the role of the process of science, and how it's not just a thing that you believe. You see these signs around places, liberal places, that say believe science. It's like, no, we don't believe science. Science is a mechanism for understanding the natural world around you. That appreciation of the skeptical worldview, I think we learned from Bill, and the process of science, and just the poetry and the beauty of this tool to understand ourselves and the world from which we come. That was certainly something that we picked up from him. Then also he said one quote that was the most memorable thing when someone asked him on one of our like marketing tours, junkets, someone asked him, Bill, what's the meaning of life? And rather than, kind of demurring and saying something kind of flip or funny, he said, the point of life is to add more of you, is to procreate, is to have a child, and everything else is everything else. And that I still think about that. And like shortly thereafter, actually right when our movie was coming out, I had my son was on the way. And so I always think about like in a small part, Bill has something to do with the fact that I'm a father.
Wow.
Pushing
Wow.
over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. I was on the fence. I'm not on the fence anymore.
Do you have other science projects or documentaries in queue for you to create?
Yeah, well, so we're obsessed, right? It's all we do. So yeah, we do have a few more in development. We actually, so this is the poster for the We Are as Gods movie. One thing that was unfortunate about it is Stuart's life is so interesting, so fascinating. You can only fit so much into a 90-minute film.
That's true.
Kevin Kelly, the one of the founding editors of Wired magazine, who we let see an early cut of the film, said, "Oh my God, amazing movie! This is a great trailer for Stuart's life." It was basically like the short pitch for Stuart's life and everything.
The 90 minutes was a short pitch. Yeah.
Exactly. So
how much how many hours of footage do you have on the so-called floor?
You know what's funny is we can't tell you anymore. Now it's about how many terabytes do we have, because we used to be able to count the tapes, right?
Yeah.
Or even beyond that, like 13 minutes for one small reel of film, right? You could add that up, but it's quite a lot for sure.
From what I remember from a script, it's usually approximately 1 minute per page from when you're filming it from a script. But when you're doing a documentary, what type of treatment do you guys use?
Yeah, we think about it in terms of shooting ratio. So we'll say like 1 to 100, every minute shot, or sorry, every minute used, maybe 100 minutes filmed. But really it depends on what you're doing, because if it's an interview heavy film, that might be different than like a verite heavy film or an archive, so it really is just all over the place. But it certainly is a lot. I mean, we shot over 80 days.
Was it a 1-camera shoot, a 3-camera shoot, or what was
so I do the cinematography and Jason does the sound, so we can keep our film crew small, but sometimes they get larger. Like when we went to Siberia, so that the Mammoth Project that Jason mentioned, Stuart's working with George Church of Harvard and these scientists in Siberia to collect DNA from the woolly mammoth in order to replicate it. And so when we went to Siberia, we came with a larger crew. So there was 2 cameras, drones, all sorts of things. So it's an accordion. It's usually small, but sometimes gets larger. But all that's to say, so we're doing a podcast about Stuart's life. It's going to be much more in-depth, 4 hours long for Audible. They're going to do a podcast version of the film. And so that's the main other thing that we're working on besides the NFT.
And will your NFT holders have that early access to that?
We thought about it. I mean, if they were interested, I mean, right now we have 129 supporters and it's growing. We'd love to offer that as something. I mean, but we have to clear it with Audible, of course. It's their property, essentially. And
of course, we could talk off camera, but I think I'm a very strong believer in digital breadcrumbs and being able to create digital merchandise from digital breadcrumbs. And so I have my own digital merchandise, digital breadcrumbs projects where I'm working with artists, mostly music artists, to create unique souvenirs for their fans.
Totally.
From experience, and they're not necessarily NFT bound, but it's just a matter of taking those moments and creating those unique experiences. Wow, I see David's going to bring something out. What is that?
That is a unique experience.
Yes.
So the Whole Earth catalog, which many of you I'm sure have heard of, is a treasure trove of what Steve Jobs called the internet before the internet, 35 years before Google. And so for those of you who haven't had the chance to look through it, it basically is like what you'd imagine if you were a teenager or in your 20s in the late 60s, and you wanted to know how to start a commune. If you wanted to know, well, what is safe sex about anyways, because I don't get those kind of books at my local Sears, How do I build, like I just passed a chemistry set, like how does chemistry even work, or building my own house? It's a how to know anything you want to know document. And so this is what Stuart Brand is.
Did he sign it for you at least?
We're not this copy, but we are going to get him to sign copies for people who buy NFTs. We have different signed items like the poster and such. And so that's all to say that what we've done is we've turned Stuart Brand's personal copy, this is not it, but his personal copy of the original Whole Earth catalog. There's only 5 known to actually have survived this long. Of the 1968 version, there's only 1,000 made. So we scanned it and we turned it into what is essentially an aging catalog, where the NFT itself was programmed to age over time.
Wow.
So that for the next 100 years. So it's like a digital art piece that shows what Stuart did. It's a collectible item. There's only so many that exist. There's also programs to every Earth Day. Yeah, over
Crumble.
12 times over a century, it'll change into something new. And so like it should hopefully increase in value as time goes on, as well as transfer value to the blockchain itself. I mean, this is something that should be around for the next 100 years. And this NFT promotes that. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an NFT that keeps on giving. Lauren, can you bring Annie back into the conversation, please? Wow, that was fairly amazing. So before we go for questions, any of you have questions for each other? Comments?
Well, yeah, actually, Annie, I want to ask you. So when you learned after you published Highfall from via NFT, even though you didn't know it was an NFT at the time, did you feel like you were inventing the future, or was this just like this is an interesting art project, let's try to distribute it, or did you think you were onto something new?
When I was mentioning it specifically, like the Highfall specifically, I didn't. It was just, for me, it was appealing, the idea to have on a blockchain a record which proves that I'm the author, which proves that this is when it was published, and all that stuff, right? As a legacy, as something to go back and check, because that would also, I was looking at it, that would potentially also solve the copyright issues, right? Mm-hmm. Because, you don't have to file a copyright. It's on blockchain, it's registered, it has your name into the, record, into the code and all that stuff. So that's what I was looking into without really realizing that there's so much to it rather than just the record, right? But I still feel like, when I'm looking at all these other applications, I still feel like probably the book, as an NFT is not the most suitable sort of, application, because, NFTs usually, when you look at it, it makes sense when they are rare. But if you are, selling thousands of copies of the same book and it's kind of, the same file that they download to read it, it kind of, doesn't always fits the whole narrative and the whole idea of it. So that's why it probably didn't really, make sense for me, kind of, to feel that, that pleasure or, that excitement around publishing a book as an NFT. But with these new pieces, it was different, because, it's only one of it, and you get the understanding whether it appeals with people, whether it resonates with them or not, and then you have absolutely no idea, because it's an auction. You have absolutely no idea how much it will be valued by others, like how much you will sell it for. Because, for me, I mean, if you compare like that, how many copies of a novel was I supposed to sell in order to get, 0.42 ETH, for example, right? It's very different when you look from that perspective. So yeah, back then, just, the short version is I didn't really know what it actually was. But it was very nice, because when I got to this space later on now with this new wave, I was telling everyone I haven't started minting anything, I haven't done anything. And then when I realized that was it, it was, oh my God, you're the OG, you minted way before all of us, Yeah. You just didn't know about it. So it kind of adds credibility in that sense, because, most of the people that I interacted with at the moment are probably earliest that came to the space are around 6 months ago or so, with this new kind of mass media, overall coverage, and it feels like it's being there earlier and understanding the tech behind it and understanding the broader perspective beyond crypto art really helps a lot, because then you can see the possibilities better rather than just sticking to one application of the whole technology.
I understand Jason has to go. Jason, thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. This is wonderful. I love the discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is a fun discussion.
And Annie, I just wanted to add that I just really identified with what you said before. It's hard to self-promote, right? I'm not a self-promoter. Jason's not a self-promoter. How do we do it? It's we just want to make cool things and do cool projects. Like we don't want to sit there and like make a bunch of noise. So you know, I appreciate that you've done these really cool things, still not having that drive to be the sort of megaphone for yourself. So thank you.
Yeah, it's just, you know, Jeff talked the right way. Like I'm more than happy to promote others and help others out, but when it's about me,
in fact, I'm pretty sure she'd be happy to promote your stuff. It's just, but her own stuff she will not promote, and it's
yeah.
And I understand how that feels, because for my stuff too, it's like it's one thing for me to promote a friend of mine who's doing amazing work, and I'll give a shout out to Carol, to Carol Baskin, who's part of the show, and she raises money to help save the cats all the time, and so I'm grateful for her work, and I'm happy to promote. And I'm giving a shout out to my friend David, who's an amazing illustrator, by the way, and I know him for a really long time. And it's but for me to do it for others is easy. Me to do it for myself is hard, you know. And it's like, how do you draw that balance? And so, you know, for a long time I was running conferences, and so my biggest competitor for my conferences were me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was very hesitant to put messages out to overload people on whatever channels I used, because I wanted to create. I wanted to keep a very low noise ratio, but for some people it's too loud anyway. And I realized, if I don't stand up for myself, who's going to stand up for me? And yes, I have friends and people will promote. I get that, and I appreciate that, and I'm grateful for that. But if I don't start that process for myself, then I cannot expect anyone else to do. And I have a lot of really interesting ideas that came to me in the last few months around NFTs and really around the digital future, where we're going in terms of media, in terms of where we can go based on the foundation of what already has been developed. And so I end up distracting myself, and it's and it's, you know, for me it's fun, and at the time it's frustrating, and I get to be in awe of what people are doing, and I do think that, you know, everyone technically is a creator. You know, my sister Michelle gave me a book from one of her favorite writers, but I think this is really important message to every creator in the audience. Side projects and hobbies are important.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend this book. It's called Steal Like an Artist. It's from Austin Kleon, and it is some good messages in the book. But I thank my sister Michelle, because I never considered my doodles to be art until she said, no, they could be art. Now, no, because David's stuff is pure art. I have been a fan of my friend David for a long time, and his creations and his doodles I treat as art. Oh yeah. Anyway, it's a fun book. If you want to read, there's some good messages. Steal Like an Artist is a wonderful book. Lauren, I know there are questions I saw Carol posted. You want to read them, Lauren, or how do you want to handle it? Unmute yourself, please, Laura.
I'm gonna bring Carol into the spotlight, if that's okay, Carol. And this way she can ask the question herself.
Okay, absolutely. Hi, Carol.
Hi, so I have two questions about fractional and not fractional, I can't even say it, fractionalized NFTs for your movie. And have you, and I apologize if you already talked about this, but I've had a number of things going on. Have you used that as a way of actually showing the video to people where they buy the NFT and that grants them access to see it? And if you sell that as a NFT, then when they resell it, you know, is that then bringing more and more people into seeing it, but not generating an income back to you? Or is there some kind of like a founder reward that's coming back to you? And my other question was kind of similar on the same thing, where if you're doing this for proceeds, that you're raising money to be able to distribute it more broadly, then as people sell them again, how are you able to distribute the profits once you actually start doing that?
I assume that was for me. So the truth is that we're in the middle of selling them now. So we haven't even created the fractionalized NFT yet. That's something that we do manually at the end of our campaign. We use an organization called Fractionalized, and essentially what they'll do is they'll take it, turn one NFT into a fractional ownership, and then whoever owns a portion of that continues to own it. And my understanding is that they can trade it, but we're not retaining any of the ownership of it. So that means if they sell it, we don't see any money. So I know that we could have done it differently where we do retain some of that profit. But in our case, we're basically just giving it out to the world and letting it go.
So you're making the money off of selling it to them, and they're not actually profit sharing with you once you start having money coming back in from that.
Correct. They just have, well, they have their ownership of it and they can choose to sell it, is my understanding.
What would their ownership mean?
Well, they own a fraction of it. So if they own 10% of the NFT, then my understanding is that they could then sell it.
I guess what I'm getting at is, how does the NFT increase in value if it's not based on the money that would come in once you start showing the film?
Well, because, well, we're not, well, so first of all, we're not charging people admission to see the film. So there is no money coming into it, is my understanding. If you have an NFT, you buy a Beeple 2 months ago, and if it's worth more now, it's the value of the Beeple that's gone up. It's not like you've created ticket sales for the Beeple, right? So my understanding is that the same thing would be true for this fractionalized NFT.
Okay. And are you, I'm sorry to keep asking questions, but so I'm involved in the periphery of some other films that we've been trying to do, animal advocacy type things. And I'm finding it really difficult for anybody in my fan base to understand crypto or NFTs or anything else. Is there anything you've done to make it easy to convert your typical fan base, or are you relying on the crypto community?
Yeah, so the conversion has been extremely difficult for us too. I mean, getting, I think Jeff said this earlier. It's like trying to get people to go to Mars. Like you know, I mean, I remember a point when credit cards were getting easy enough to use online, but most people that were in my age were not going to put their credit card.
I mean, to put things into perspective, when voicemail first happened, it was not culturally acceptable in most places in the world. It was considered rude to leave voicemail for people.
Yeah.
It was considered absolutely rude to leave voicemail. Think about way before texting, just the concept of voicemail, for you not to personally answer the phone, to go to a time to being recorded. And then, of course, someone leaves you a voicemail and you don't respond. How dare you not do that? And
Yeah,
so
I said something to you.
and so there's a lot of cultural things when it comes to shifting what we're used to.
But
And
also,
and here, you know, the introduction of a term without necessarily a deep understanding of what the term means is a major shift. And I do believe it takes a lot of time, because while there is association of crypto and everything it means, both negative and positive to certain people, as well as you could even de-link crypto from it and say that you were offering a digital, you know, a way to do something that perhaps is more efficient, more effective, that hasn't been done before. But there's so much knowledge transfer that has to happen that gets in the way of the actual event of what we're doing. So it gets difficult. And so when I used to promote voice over IP, because of the ability that we can talk on the internet, the one thing I pushed really hard is don't call it voice over IP. Don't tell people about the technology. Tell people about what we can do differently because of it. What are the things that are different now that it exists, as opposed to saying what it is. And if you've ever seen phone companies promote 3G, 4G, 5G, they clearly are not listening to me, because we don't care about those Gs. You know, we care about other Gs. And so when it comes to this proliferation, I do think the technology will allow us to raise money, to raise funds, to transfer ownership, share ownership. There are issues, you know, with fractional ownership of assets. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't give financial advice. I don't give legal advice. But from what I remember from a long time ago, when we share ownership and transfer ownership in fractions, there's different types of attributes associated with what happens in a transaction, which might make the NFT a security NFT versus it may make, like if we were talking about tokens, it would go from being a utility token to a security token. That's covered by different areas of law, and that creates a lot of, not heaviness, but rules of how to transfer. And there's certain bodies of law and certain agencies in different countries which govern how assets are sold and transferred based on the asset class. So it's a simple thing, but once you fractionalize ownership of something, particularly of value, from what I remember, it's a different type of asset class, and there are laws to follow and to be aware
You're right. Yeah, you're right. Even if it's not fractionalized, if a token brings in monetary benefit, if it's a revenue share, or if it's earning you a yield or whatever, usually in most of the cases it's considered as a security token and goes under that regulation, which makes everything way more complicated, starting from how you market it, finishing with how everything else is happening. So it's way more complex. So it's not even, it doesn't even have to do with the fractionalization part. It just has to do with the whole concept behind, are you just getting the token and the ownership over a certain digital asset, or is this digital asset and that ownership also bringing you monetary revenue with the time?
But I think it goes even beyond, because I agree with everything that was said. But then, if I understood Carol's question, it's like, how do you get somebody who's never done any of this before just to get in on it?
Yeah.
And I think even at that level, that's why I was thinking about credit cards. Like, my mom wouldn't dare put a credit card online. And I bet you, I'm running an NFT campaign. She said she tried to get in to buy one and just couldn't figure it out. It was just too complicated. It's too complicated. To get a MetaMask, get a wallet, connect it to the she needs a professional just to make a purchase. So I think we need to get over that hurdle, and it has something to do with the technology, but also with education, like making tools that people can get a simple step-by-step.
I feel like this is 2017 all over again, because back then I was just commenting how difficult it was to buy. I was doing a conference actually dealing with folks that are involved in blockchain, and people wanted to pay with their own coins. And I was happy to do so, but the on-ramps and off-ramps were so difficult to integrate as payment systems. And if you look at just how challenging it is to this very day to even PayPal finally has broken through maybe as an alternative payment platform. But the reason the first use case I had for my own Jeff coin from Rally was as a means for tipping artists on my music show, because I was tired of the artists having to have fees taken out from tips received. So I went with having my own coin in a closed system as a way to transfer value from one location to the other. And that seemed to work. And where Rally did succeed is if you happen to be living inside the Rally ecosystem and mint an NFT, they actually don't charge for minting and they don't charge for transfer. And yes, you still have to get inside that side of the looking glass. Yes. And which is like jumping in. It is Alice in Wonderland in many ways. But once you get into that private system, there's no MetaMasks or anything, but it's a lot of knowledge, and so we are, part of this brave new world, and to cross this chasm is going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And what do you get from it? Well, I think great opportunity, but with it is a lot of resistance, right? There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of issues, some which we are aware of, others which we're not aware of. And that whole user experience could be improved. It could be improved. It's, particularly from people looking to do social good. I mean, Carol, I'm in awe of all the work you do. I love the NFT announcement you made where you were raising money for your charity by selling the NFTs. And, but it's for people who want to just contribute, it's just friction. And so we're not there yet that it's so smooth, but I do hope that things will get better in time, hopefully a shorter time frame.
Could somebody put in the chat the link to your project, David?
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
Buy an NFT to your fractional.
So the platform is called Mirror, and it's just weareasgods.mirror.xyz. And through there, you can see the collection of our editions that are for sale. A little bit more description of how the fractionalized NFT is going to work. And we did our best, because it is so confusing, to do a graphical representation of how that works. So, and if you have any notes on it, if something is unclear, let us know, because we could always improve, I'm sure.
Wonderful. All right.
If I break it, I will.
Thank you.
Lauren, we have time for one more question. You had one more question, Lauren?
One more question.
Nice to see you, Carol. Thank you for asking questions and hanging out with us. Great. Nice to see you.
Same here.
Lauren, who's the next question from?
The next question is from Annette.
Hi, Annette.
I'm gonna just unmute right now. Hold on 1 second.
Got it. It's okay.
Okay, Annette, go to it.
All right. Thank you. It's interesting. I appreciate the programs Because while a lot of the NFTs and topics about NFTs that are spoken about in the shows aren't anything that I would actively do, when Annie came on and talked about NFTing one of her written projects, my ears went, oh yeah? Because I'm starting on a project right now where it's a book of 99 short stories, and they're all 99 words each. It's taken me 4 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
Because that's hard as hell to write, right? Okay. So I thought to myself, well, that's kind of interesting, because if I took just to promote the book and created an NFT, it would be, I would imagine, of something that is not in the book. So it would be 100 short stories, and I would create another one just like Patreon. You create something for the people that support you, and it's a special gift just for them. So I thought, am I thinking along the right lines there, that might be something of value? Because, I mean, what the heck? I mean, who knows? You think of all different ways to promote yourself or promote your works. This just sounds like something I've never done before, but there might be people out there willing to get it because they want that one story they know they can't get in my book.
Yeah, I think that's so that is an absolute great use case for NFTs, and that goes back to, in some cases, the idea of being able to create the value and using the NFT as a gatekeeper or gateway into your content. And
I mean, the other thing is also kind of, NFTs these days, especially for collectible NFTs, they are used for building a community around you, right? So basically you can have an NFT token, which would, gather potentially your readers around you, and you can have you can put different utilities to that. Apart from exclusive content, you can potentially have, I don't know, like a monthly meetups or monthly readings, or they get access to your next book, kind of the preview, and are the first ones to read it, or whatever it is. So the possibilities are very broad. It's up to you of what do you want to achieve with that as a result, and then you just retro plan and go back and see what would make best sense to kind of tokenize it, because potentially you may want also to consider having each story as a separate NFT and just sell them separately and have a limited edition for each one or whatever. So it all depends what is the end goal, what you would like to achieve by that.
And that you could also create, if you will, your own club, right? Where the NFT really is the access to the club, where you can come in through the door and read one poem or read up to all of your, to read one story or all the stories. So, and and you could also create it as like a timeshare, or, there are asset classes where you literally could sell the rights. You could literally sell your poems, short stories, other works of art as a token. It's just a matter of the laws that you have to follow to transfer ownership that way. I mean, if you, I have too much experience in an awareness of security tokens to not worry on behalf of others in terms of compliance. It's unfortunately, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so we, just to be aware of what's possible. But from the NFT side, certainly to tokenize or to create unique experiences and to sell them as access, as a ticket, if you will, as a movie ticket, as a ticket into your collection, that works well. Okay. And I wish you success. I think we're on that bleeding edge of opportunity. When you look back in time, you'll figure out what happened. But in the meanwhile, I think everyone here today is a creator. And and the set of tools we have available to us is changing, in the sense that as we become more aware, we become more capable of changing the future and disrupting it in our own ways. I'd like to thank David. Thank you for joining the show. I'd like to thank your partner too. And Nani, thank you for being a guest today. It's so nice to see you. Nice to see all of you.
Thanks for having me over. Thank you.
And congratulations on the pioneering work you're all doing. And really much respect to all the creators here. I'm Jeff Pulver. The Creator Economy comes to you live on Tuesdays, brought to you by Pulver Studios. A shout out to my sister Lauren, who's here, and the other hand is from Harry. Thank you guys for doing this. So we'll be back live. If you're watching this on demand and you don't catch the live program, you can get a free ticket to the studio audience by going to pulver.com and clicking on following the connections. And I am actively looking for guests. I think I may invite David Cohn to be a guest on a future show, because he is an artist. Even if he's not minting NFTs, he's certainly a creator. And maybe I can twist his arm to come and talk about why he is or is not minting NFTs. But we'll be back next Tuesday. Thanks for watching, and end the show now. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.
Fear, Dave. Okay, done.